Welcome to this lesson on designing websites, Internet, blog, and LMS basics. The Internet is becoming a primary medium for distributing education, and knowing how to use some basic publishing tools like blogs and LMSs is fundamental to designing for online distribution. This lesson will therefore give you some fundamental strategies for using such tools to further develop your learning design skills. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe the basics of the Internet and apply various design principles and strategies to blog and LMS sites. In this session, we'll be looking at three major topics. First, we'll introduce the basics of the Internet. Second, we'll discuss blog design. And third, we'll talk about learning management systems like Moodle. We call the Internet the World Wide Web because it gives us a useful metaphor that helps us imagine all of the connected computers that allow for instantaneous global communications. The Internet is a collection of client computers and servers. Servers are computers that store and distribute data. Client computers request data from servers when displaying web pages. You may have heard of Web 2.0. The term was used to differentiate a new kind of Internet from an old one that was referred to as Web 1.0. Originally, web developers coded information into web pages using languages like hypertext markup language. Only developers could write to the web. Because content was controlled by developers, the Internet was a static and data-poor place. Web 2.0 changed the Internet forever. Pages began to be coded in languages with scripts that allowed data to be stored and retrieved from databases. Users could then write to the web without needing to know code. This meant that web developers no longer hard-coded the content of a website. They now began to use scripting languages that allowed users to add site content to databases. This gave us the Internet as we know today, with its eBays, Facebooks, Wikipedias, and so on. Popular sites like these are now dynamic and data-rich places. Web 2.0 allowed for new social applications which are the foundation of today's most popular websites. For example, casting sites like YouTube, wiki sites like Wikipedia, social networking sites like Facebook, and content sharing sites like Reddit. Each of these are examples of Web 2.0 dynamic, data-rich sites that are driven by user-generated content. In addition to Web 2.0, improvements in bandwidth, file compression, and computer processing have also allowed audio and video to be easily shared. This means that modalities of audio and video are becoming very popular on the Internet, which is transforming the primary modalities that people are using to access information and educate themselves. There are many opportunities that today's Internet brings to education and learning design. The first opportunity relates to new types of learning communities and collaboration that can exist. For example, individuals and academic communities around the globe can build communities of practice more easily using social networking, wikis, and so on. Communities of practice is a term that refers to specialized professional communities that often develop and collaborate virtually. Such Web 2.0 applications as social networking and wikis are tools that can support such communities. The second opportunity that Web 2.0 brings to education relates to the vast amount of easily retrievable information we now live with. The accessibility of information allows for different kinds of learning to take place in face-to-face and online classrooms, which we'll discuss further in this video. The third opportunity relates to how learners participate in academia. Today's Internet allows for participation and creativity. For example, students and instructors can more easily participate in academic dialogue and become creators of academic content rather than just consumers, using such tools as blogs, wikis, and casting. Web 2.0 does pose new challenges for learning, and the first challenge relates to privacy. With Web 2.0, information about students, faculty, and staff can be disseminated more easily. Because digital content can be saved and reposted, instructors must work hard to keep information about students private for practical, ethical, and legal reasons. British Columbia, for example, has legislation called the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, often called FOIPOP, which obligates teachers to keep student data private. This is one reason why you're strongly encouraged to use throwaway accounts when you use such tools as YouTube. A second challenge relates to intellectual property. As digital information can be shared and duplicated so easily on the Internet, traditional notions of intellectual property are being threatened and blurred. Copyright infringement is proving to be difficult, if not impossible, to reasonably enforce, which has and will continue to change how we share and declare ownership of music, movies, books, and so on. A third challenge relates to sourcing and validating information. Anyone who has ever researched using such resources as Wikipedia knows that the sourcing and validating of information can sometimes be difficult. Because anyone can say virtually anything on the internet, determining the truth and relevance of information can be harder. To not get lost in user opinion and assumption, the requirement of critical thinking and education can therefore be greater when learners use Web 2.0 resources as information sources. The fifth challenge posed by Web 2.0 relates to the requirement of greater amounts of technical literacy to participate in education. As we discuss in this course, there are many tools and technologies that learners can use. Lastly, the vast amount of data from Web 2.0 can make navigating, organizing, and storing information much more difficult. It's easy to become overloaded or fatigued by the amount of information we see, so learning how to effectively organize and retrieve such information can be challenging. Now that we know some internet basics, we're going to look at some design strategies for one common Web 2.0 tool, the blog. The blog is a genre of text like other genres we may be used to. We follow different patterns of language, or genres, when we're communicating with different communities and types of texts. For example, in business, letters, plans, and reports should be professional, concise, persuasive, and clear. And in academia, such documents as articles, posters, and books should be empirical, reasoned, evidence-based, and critical. The voices and styles of each of these genres of writing are often very different. When we ask what a good professional blog is, we can look to good examples from these other genres. Blogs are similar to academic genres like essays, posters, and presentations because they require careful citations, clear logic, evidence, as well as critical thinking. They're also similar to newspaper articles and editorials because they require good sources of information and are written more for a public audience. Like academic and media genres, good blogs are informative and persuasive. That is, they help a given audience learn something new and believe something different. But because they're purely digital, blogs are also different in many ways than printed academic and media publications. Using digital media means you can be multimodal and communicate in many ways besides text, including using images, video, sound, and interactive objects to make your blog more informative and engaging. Blogs are also much more interconnected than print documents because readers can immediately follow links to related and relevant articles. For example, you don't need to cite like in academia. Instead, you can direct your readers to your sources using links that your audience can follow for more information. Blogs are also much more multi-directional than their printed counterparts because readers can participate in and give feedback to the article. Good bloggers encourage dialogue and social exchange by compelling readers to comment and share their own ideas. There are many criteria that good blogs should follow. For example, they should be updated frequently to give readers reasons to return. They should provide the reader with context about the article, like author and organizational information. They should be well written. They should be easy to skim so impatient readers can access content without being discouraged and leaving. They should fix their mistakes with updates and retractions, and they should have original content that makes them unique so they can attract a niche readership. There are a number of blogging platforms that can be installed on servers. These platforms are also referred to as content management systems, each of which are built for specific uses. For example, WordPress, Tumblr, and Blogger are platforms built specifically for bloggers, while other CMSs like Drupal and Joomla are much more extendable for different types of websites. In education, blogging can be used in many ways. For example, when used by learners, blogging can be used for authentic and practical writing assignments where learners try to engage and communicate with a real audience using a real publication. Also, because blogs are written for more than just the teacher, they can invite feedback and discussion from a broader audience, even allowing learners to develop relationships and professional networks outside of the traditional learning environment. When used by educators and designers, blogging can help teachers communicate with learners and parents and help trainers conduct outreach for staff and employees. Educators and designers may also choose to use blogs to share curriculum or advertise training events and to keep ongoing contact with learners for more longitudinal training. In addition to using content management systems to create blogs, educators and designers can also use learning management systems which are built more specifically for education. Learning management systems are built more specifically for education because they have a number of tools that support communication, learning activities, and assessments. In the online environment, communication can be asynchronous or synchronous. Asynchronous means not at the same time and refers to communication where there is a gap between when messages are sent and received. For example, LMSs can allow teachers and students to share messages, post to forums, upload audio and video lectures, create image galleries, and so on. Synchronous communication can also be integrated into LMSs using different tools to allow users to communicate at the same time. For example, students and teachers can use chat for texting, host audio and video webinars, share applications, and so on. Each of these communication tools can be used to support participants who require help or to develop social interactions that support learning. As designers, we need to carefully select the most appropriate communication tools we can to meet our goals. Thinking back to the beginning of the course, you may remember several communication principles like consistency, completeness, relevance, clarity, conciseness, and objectivity. These principles are important to all learning objects, including LMS websites. When you're developing an LMS website, for example, you need to make sure that the content is uniform, structured, and well-connected, that you're thorough but don't include anything irrelevant, that your language is precise, simple, and well-chunked, and that everything is connected to clearly defined purposes and outcomes. In addition to using these principles, when adding content to an LMS, you can use different strategies to support flow and readability. To help readers to identify important information, it should be placed at the top of sections and pages. As well, instructors must be careful to chunk information into appropriate amounts to prevent information overload. This can be done through the use of consistent headings, bullets, and numbers, and by avoiding needlessly long paragraphs. Lastly, using whitespace appropriately can help break up information and make the page more accessible to readers. Because the instructor is not immediately available for explanations or answers, it can be very easy for online learners to get lost if directions are not easily found and explicit in the course site. This means that all activities and assignments must be clearly defined to minimize confusion and frustration. To further reduce frustrations and help learners feel supported and connected, you should also include contact information, regularly invite questions, and use tools like forums and messaging to connect learners. Now that you've been introduced to blogging and learning management systems, you should be better able to complete the web-related assignments in the course. You'll see several resources in the course website to help you get more experience with blogging and LMS design, so you'll want to check those out. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email.